this is fun. We're on TV, we're making the television.
It's
like Wayne's World. It's like Wayne's World.
It's exactly like Wayne's World. And, am I Wayne or are you Wayne?
We're both Wayne in this version.
So hey everybody, I'm here with my friend and mentor, Sam Hiyate. Sam is the president of the Rights Factory Literary Agency, and Sam's been doing this work of publishing authors for 25 years now, I think. And last year we started a little writers group in Toronto, which has grown to about 2,000 members. You can find us on Meetup. It's So You Want to Write a Book? ? And today we're asking Sam questions that our members have submitted, and we're hoping that he has some good advice for aspiring writers and authors. And so let's dive in. So Sam, this is from Casey at the Center for Social Innovation. What's the best way to remember small details so there are no continuity errors in a long story, especially with conversations?
Well, the easy answer to that would be to have an outline that specifically notes where there's possible breaks in continuity, where you might break continuity. But if you do it accidentally, an outline won't catch it. So the best way would be to have an alpha reader or an editor or a friend, hopefully somebody who's as good a reader as you are, look at it and kind of test it out for continuity. I feel like sometimes as an artist it's better to have external feedback to help improve the art. You can't do everything yourself. That's why we have writers have always had editors and other readers.
Fantastic. Okay. We'll keep going. A couple questions from James from meetup.com. First one, who are examples of successful Canadian fiction writers whose early work appeared in literary magazines, and what was the story of their big break?
Okay, so the answer here is all of them. Especially literary writers use literary magazines to start. So let's start with Alice Munro, who is the first Canadian to win the Nobel Prize. She started by getting an agent in New York, and her American agent, the first thing she did in the 70s was get her in the New Yorker. And the New Yorker is more than just a literary magazine, obviously. It's probably the biggest literary magazine in the world, but the New Yorker helped establish Alice Munro's work in the American market, and then it went from there to having book publishers in New York take her stuff. So that's Alice Munro. It's been a long time coming, but she's now got the biggest literary award you can get, which is a Nobel Prize. Margaret Atwood started by doing little poetry chapbooks and also being published in literary magazines. Probably every major Canadian literary magazine that goes back to the early 60s would have had some of her poetry, and that's what encouraged her to do her early books. They were all poems until I think in the early 70s she wrote her first novel. Maybe 1969, I haven't got it at my disposal. But anyway, so there's another one. And the third example, if we want to look at another, Atwood won the Booker Prize, and of course she's all over television now with both Handmaid's Tale and Alien's Grace. But the other Canadian writer who's kind of world-renowned is Michael Ondaatje, and he started also with poetry. He published in literary magazines because as a young poet, where else are you going to go? So he did that for a long time. He did 4 or 5 books of poetry before he won the Governor General's Award in Canada for one of his books, maybe Running in the Family, I can't remember exactly, which is kind of a memoir, or that might have been a novel, but he won it for something. And then the point is that they all use literary magazines because Canada is very good with supporting its writers through the magazines. Their main job is to find literary writers and to bring them an audience, even if it's a small magazine that has 1,000 readers, let's say.
So for those people that don't know how to find a literary magazine to query, to pitch to, what would you suggest? Just walk into a bookstore and ask them for some recommendations? Or?
If you're a bookstore person, always a good idea. There's the whole it's under art and journals. There's art and literary journals. And all the small magazines seem to be together, at least in the Chapters Indigos in Canada. And also in the Barnes & Nobles in the US, you'll see them all together. But I feel like it might be more, more efficient to search online. And there's in Canada, the CBC keeps a list of literary magazines as part of their competition, the CBC short story competition. And there's also a great website called placesforwriters.com, and every week some new magazine starts up and they post in Places for Writers. And for beginning writers, your best hope is to submit to a new magazine that doesn't have already thousands of writers sending stuff to them. So I feel like if there's a tip here, it's if you're a young or new writer, you should look at Places for Writers or type in Google new literary magazines or whatever to try to figure out who hasn't been overwhelmed with submissions yet. Because some of those new magazines are going to get 20, 30, 50, 100 at the most submissions for their first issue. So you would stand a much better chance than the one that's established, like the New Yorker, where there are thousands of submissions going in every week.
Okay, thanks.